Uh, Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention for this session on Sudan. I have with me here today His Excellency Mohammed Bashir Abdallah. He's the Minister for Minerals in Sudan, and I've had the opportunity to have a great deal of interaction with him yesterday and today, and it's been very enjoyable. And he's joined by Jeff Quartermain, who's the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Perseus Gold, an Australian company. And I have to confess that about 100 years ago, Jeff and I used to work together, so it's familiar territory. We might perhaps start this session with an address from the Minister. So, Minister, there's the microphone for you. Would you join us now as the Minister gives us a tight summary of Sudan minerals? You just that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Gavin. Thank you, the audience. Good afternoon. Actually, let me first thank the government of Saudi Arabia, represented by the Honorable Minister of Industry, Mr. Badr Al-Kharif. I would say it's my pleasure to be present here and participate in this important conference for the second time. I would like to express my thanks and gratitude again to the government of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for organizing this international forum on an annual basis, which has started to build a hope for discussions on issues of internal industry, mineral industry, in addition to regular forums such as those in Canada and Australia and South Africa. Also, my warm greetings to all attendees, ministers, if there are any, brothers and sisters who are participating from all over the world with the aim of exchanging knowledge and benefiting from the developing of all fields of industry. Dear participants, mining is not new in our country, the Sudan. In fact, we have a history of mining that goes back to millennia. However, over the years, the mining sector was neglected as the economy shifted to other sectors, especially oil, in more recent years. Now, again, with all revenue ceasing to play a major role in our economy since 2011, the mining sector, especially gold, has rapidly replaced it and rose to importance. In fact, the expansion of gold mining is historical by any standards in terms of the speed with which production grew in the last 10 years. Although most people may not know, today we are actually among the top 3 producers in Africa or in the African continent. In 2025, the recorded production of gold was about 50 tons. And I purposely said recorded production because there are a lot of gold smuggled. And this also is estimated in 2022 to be 42 tons. However, it should be pointed out that more than 80% of this production is coming from artisanal, small-scale, or local producers. Therefore, opportunities abound for formal, modern, bigger and bigger mining sector to coexist with informal and small-scale sector. However, the future looks bright. In 2022, Perseus Mining, the gentleman just on my left, an Australian explorer, and developer and producer closed an action with Orca Gold. Orca Gold is a Canadian company resulting in a combination of business. Perseus has now started the process of developing a modern large-scale gold mine on Block 14 in Nile State, in River Nile State. The arrival of such a serious and well-known explorer and miner, we believe, would attract others to the mineral sector in our country. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa has very diverse minerals and holds huge mineral resources, some of which have been discovered and production processes are underway, and some of which are still under exploration and evaluation. These include the critical minerals, which I talked about it in the ministerial round discussion yesterday. It's enough to say at this point that in order to achieve the world's energy security and climate goals, cooperation and solidarity in financing, in technical studies and evaluation, and in extraction of these commodities in Africa are required to ensure that the supply chain of such critical minerals are sustainable and can serve global needs for clean energy. All the African countries with the right geologies for these minerals, including in particular in Sudan or the Sudan, are in need of support for such assistance. In the Sudan, while it will continue the efforts to build national consensus for a stronger unity, we are also encouraging investors to come to our country. Therefore, my ministry and Ministry of Finance are working very closely to encourage companies. Last year, we created the Inter-Ministerial Project Support Task Force, the aim of which is to ease the bureaucratic procedures and remove the obstacles mining companies face in the project development. The task force was set up to work closely with the mining companies, the Geological Research Survey of the Sudan, which is known as GRAS, and the Sudanese Mineral Resources Company, which is known as SMRC, to facilitate bureaucratic processes for the companies at the level of development. Lastly, we hope that the conference will achieve the highest degree of success for all participants. We are looking forward to participating in the regular forums in the coming years and seeing the global economy at its best with sustainable supply chains of all commodities and the developing countries progressing and prospering. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Minister. Thank you for that. Minister, in your address, you touched upon opportunities abound for a formal, modern and bigger mining sector in Sudan. I can see that you've got honourable and well-respected companies like Perseus there, but you also have a considerable representation from artisanal mining. I was just wondering if you could touch on the role that the government is playing in organising these artisanal miners to help transform and advance mining in Sudan.
Thank you. This is a very important question because we have a big problem in Sudan in regards to the artisanal mining because they have started activities in this field well before any involvement of the government in this field. This is started in the early of 2000. At that time, the government of Sudan, they are caring for oil. Unfortunately, they are caring only for oil revenue. Unfortunately, when the oil revenue gone with the secession of South Sudan, the government of Sudan started to see for alternatives. So they found that the only or the immediate the alternative in front of them is gold mining. So, but unfortunately, they find out this sector is almost dominated by artisanal miners for a long time. And in order to control the artisanal miners, they find out that the artisanal miners created two main problems. The first problem is that the unresponsible mining. So they use the mercury and other chemicals without taking into consideration the health and the what do you call it, the eco precautions. So this is one of the problems they have created. The other one is also due to the widespread, widespread activity of artisanal mining. For the government, it was very difficult for the government to control or even to access or to get hold of the production of the artisanal miners. This means that huge income was lost because the government cannot control them and cannot access the production of the artisanal miners. So we now make some arrangements so as to control this activity. First of all, we started to give IDs to the artisanal miners. We started to group them, and we started also to organize them in what do you call it, a kind of mining associations, so as to give them concessions
To organize them, yeah.
collectively. Yeah, this is one of the solutions that we do it. And there is also one more resolution we sought for this problem. We created a kind of what we name it as a tripartite contract, which bring together the government and the concession company as well as the artisanal miners, whereby the artisanal miners can sell their extracted ore or actually they deliver it to the concession company to be treated later, and then they divide their shares on pre-agreed shares.
Yep.
So these are the solution that we try to find
So-
what we call the artisanal mining.
Yep, so it is being addressed, which is good to hear. Now, Jeffrey, Perseus has certainly established itself as a leading mid-tier gold producer. I think it's got a market cap of about $3 billion Australian, so it's no tiddler, that's for sure. It's a decent operation there, or company. Last year you acquired the Meyas Sand gold project, which was previously known as Block 14 in Sudan. It's a material change in direction for Perseus, and as I understand it, it's the first time that a large Western gold company has invested in Sudan's gold industry. We've heard from the Minister about the merits, but what was it about Sudan that led Perseus to make that acquisition? And importantly, what are your expectations?
Well, thanks very much, Gavin, for the opportunity to speak and support the Minister here today. You're quite right, Perseus has done very well in recent times with our 3 mining operations in West Africa. And of course, as successful as we've been, we have the same problem as every other mining company in the world, and that is that our resource is diminishing each day as we use it, and we do need to replenish it. Now, somebody said earlier this afternoon that capital is mobile and has choices as to where it goes. And clearly, when Perseus was considering what it would do next, we looked at a number of places and applied a series of criteria that led us to the decision to invest in Sudan. So perhaps if I could just reiterate those particular points. So the first of those things was the potential for finding substantial resources, and I think that the Nubian Shield mineral province is perhaps one of the last unexplored major provinces in the world. I mean, it is. We've heard today South Africa and Argentina and various others talk about their mineral resources, but I can assure you that the mineral resources on the Nubian Shield are enormous, and not only are they large in size, but they support very large-scale mining operations, and that's precisely what we were seeking. We were seeking to find a deposit that would enable us to operate over an extended period of time. And we've certainly done that with the Maya Sand project. The second thing we look at is the level of cooperation that we can achieve with the government, and I have to say that goes into several areas. The first of those is if the government has an attitude of working as a partner and not an adversary. We need to collaborate, and certainly in Sudan, we and the government of Sudan work very closely together. In fact, the Sudanese government has a 20% interest in our project, so has a clear interest in us succeeding along the way. But beyond that, what we were looking for is documentation, sets of terms that we can work to that will enable us to have a level of certainty going forward in what we're doing. The Minister mentioned the task force that the government has set up recently, and that's a major and a very helpful initiative to be able to help us as newcomers to the country to be able to find our way through the bureaucracy, etc., and to get things done. So on the government cooperation side of things, we're very pleased with what we discovered. The third area that we look at is, what realistically we want a jurisdiction where the rule of law applies. Now, Perseus is apolitical. We have no interest in who is actually running the country or anything beyond that, and no, we have no involvement in politics. But what we do like to see is to have a legal system where if we comply with the law, then we can go about our business without interference, and similarly if people don't apply the law, then they're held to account. And I think that while the Sudan is going through a transition period in its specific form of governance, we believe that the fundamentals are there, and we're looking forward over the next few months to seeing some cementing of those arrangements in place, which will give us that level of security. The fourth thing that we look for when we go to countries is to the workforce, and to see that there's a level of, firstly, education, and secondly, enthusiasm on the part of local people to come and work with us. And I have to say that in Sudan, we've been delighted by the response that we've had when we've gone out to recruit. The number and quality of people is very good, and I think that is beneficial. It's a definite win-win situation. It's good for us to have a good workforce. It's good for the country of Sudan to have employment and have people working. And finally, if I can just say very briefly, and this is an important point, is the industrial capacity in the country. Now, it doesn't spring to people's mind immediately that there is industrial capacity in Sudan, but I have to say we've been very pleasantly surprised by what we've found. There was a very strong oil industry, as the Minister mentioned. It's been supported by Sudanese industry, and that capacity is there to support us as gold miners.
Okay, Jeff, in perhaps a minute, can you give us, with the Maya Sand project, can you give us where you're up to in terms of financing and developing the project, and when you expect to make a development decision?
Well, look, we will make a development decision this year. There's not too much doubt about that. We've got a few things to do before we get to that point. In terms of financing it, we can finance it from our balance sheet as it stands at the moment. But I think there are a number of initiatives underway that will be helpful for both us and for future people. Hopefully the Sudanese government will adopt the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative that was mentioned by one of the previous speakers. That would certainly send a positive signal to the global financial market. But in terms of what Perseus is doing, we've been taking a little bit of time to get to know our partners, get to know the lie of the land, and put all the fundamentals in place to be able to make a firm development decision later this year.
Okay. Minister, the last question to you. Jeff's given us a feel, and it's clear that there's strong mineral prospectivity in Sudan and that it's a competitive place to go. The last point on that is one that's been raised all that. Could you just touch upon, for maybe a minute, no more, that on investment law in respect of foreign investors, in other words, the advantages granted by the investment law to foreign investors?
Thank you for that question. Actually, the investment law in Sudan encourages investors to come in all sectors. One of the there are some incentives that the investment law gives to the investors. First of all, the investor who comes there, we give him residence for also the time that he's staying there with his project. This is one thing. The other thing is that all the equipments, the machineries that he imposed for his project are exempted from custom duties. This is second. Number three is also what they call it, the tax.
The tax regime?
The tax regime. Yeah, the business tax. The business tax
All right.
is also when the investor start production on commercial basis, he will enjoy the exemption of business tax for 5 years. And yeah, this is one was the last point. And also there is exemption of VAT as well. So all these are incentives for the investors in Sudan. So.
Actually, Gavin, can I just add to that, given that we've negotiated a set of terms recently with the government, and as you know, I've worked in many countries around the world, and the investment regime that we have in Sudan is as good as I've experienced anywhere, and it's extremely encouraging to us to come and invest, and you know, certainly what the Sudanese government has negotiated is on a par with any other country in the world.
Well, knowing where Jeff's worked over many years, that's a very strong statement and something, quite frankly, you could almost bank on that basis. Time has beaten us, so ladies and gentlemen, would you please join me in thanking our Minister and Jeff for their time in talking about Sudan. Thank you.